Hello, bonjour, and welcome to your new Alti1 Exchange video. If you're not familiar with the Alti1 Exchange, it is a wine investment and trading platform as well as a wine club. You should definitely check out the link in the video description to learn more. In our last video in this series, we went all around Spain to check out all the different styles of wines the country has to offer. Today, we're starting our deeper dive into individual Spanish regions, so you get to know them by their first name. And of course, we're beginning with the most famous of them all, Rioja. We've all heard the name Rioja, I'm sure all of you have, but how many of you actually know what's behind this illustrious name? We'll keep it super simple and short here, although I'll give you, of course, enough details and insights from a winemaker who's actually worked in Spain. I have. So you really grasp well and remember important facts, and you truly get to understand the wines. That's the most important thing, isn't it? This is your essential guide to the wines from Rioja. Let's go. I could spend 10-15 minutes talking about the grapes used in Rioja, but you'd probably get bored and you wouldn't remember a third of the details or names anyway. So here's what you have to know essentially. Rioja is Tempranillo. Rioja wines are pretty much all blended, unless it's a very special and rather anecdotal single vineyard cuvee, otherwise always blended from different grapes, but with Tempranillo at the core, with a very high proportion of it, above 80, 85, 90% generally. So there's one thing you need to remember about the grapes of Rioja. If there's one thing, well, this is that Rioja is Tempranillo. It's easy. Now, they use other grapes in small proportions to complement and enrich the core of Tempranillo, augment the blend if you wish. Here are the three grapes that are used and what they do in the blend, what winemakers use them for. Garnacha, aka Grenache, brings in body and fruitiness into the blend. It's an oily wine, so it adds body. It's plenty fruity as well, and less tannic generally than Tempranillo, so it sort of loosens up and dilutes a little bit the grape from the Tempranillo to make some wines that are a little more generous and pleasing. Mazuelo is the Rioja name for a grape known otherwise as Carignan or Carignana in Spain. They don't use a lot of it, just a little bit, and it adds a little component of high tannins and high acidity. It adds a little more aromatic complexity to the blend as well, with earthiness notes and dark red berries. Then comes Graciano, which is a grape that is more local and unique to this part of Spain. Only Rioja and the neighboring Navarra grow it pretty much. Graciano is not very tannic, but it's very dark in color. So it's really nice to add a little bit of it to deepen the color of Tempranillo that is not always very dark as a grape and as a wine. It also adds quite a lot of aromatic intensity and complexity. It's a very fragrant grape with different notes of blackberry, floral tones of violet, which is always nice floral little touch, and a lot of chocolate. So it's that simple. Tempranillo plus a few touches of other grapes to spice things up. A little is what it means. Salt and pepper on a steak. Salt and pepper, different touches on a base of Tempranillo. The essentials of the grapes from Rioja. And again, let's really keep it simple here. Remember that Rioja is really cool. It's a very cool area to visit, believe me, with great food and great wines, of course. But it's also a relatively cool climate, relatively in Spain, for Spain anyways. Not German cool or Burgundy cool, those are super cool regions, but cooler than inland Spain because of the Atlantic Ocean that is not far. There are three subregions in Rioja you need to at least hear about, that wine connoisseurs know about. The north and west of Rioja, because it's a fairly large region, that northwest is cooler because the ocean is closer, so it gets cooling oceanic breezes. Two of those three subregions are in this cooler zone, that's Rioja Alavesa and Rioja Alta. Those two areas, on top of having a cooler weather, also have a cooler soil type because they have a lot of limestone in them. And limestone is cooler than sand or gravels as it absorbs the sun's radiations rather than reflecting them onto the vines, onto the grapes. Limestone is a cold piece of rock if you wish, while sand and gravels or pebbles get really hot. Rioja Alavesa is a little more chalky, while Rioja Alta has a bit more limestone clay, so that's getting a bit technical, so a little different but essentially colder and giving more mineral, tighter, finer wines, as limestone do. Now the south of Rioja is called Low Rioja because it's lower on a map, so Rioja Baja meaning Low Rioja in Spanish, like Baja California means Low California. Here it's way more continental a climate, so it gets warmer in summer especially, plus the soil is a lot sandier, so warmer. This is the largest area in Rioja, but not the one that gives the best wines, unfortunately, because wines are weightier, heavier and less refined by the limestone. They don't have all that much. The bulk of cheap Rioja wine is produced there in Grenache, which needs a lot of heat, is also grown here more extensively. The top Rioja cuvées would generally have more wines in the blend. Remember, we're talking about blends here, always pretty much. The finer wines have more wines from the upper Rioja, which is finer, than the Baja Rioja, which is heavier. Easy. So now that we have our different grapes and our different terroirs, we've made different wines in our bodega, and we need to blend them together and make a wine people will actually enjoy and, importantly, recognize as Rioja. What do we do? Well, to summarize and simplify, when you taste wines from Rioja today, you have two schools of winemaking styles. The old school traditional Rioja style, you could say the Spanish school, and the historically more modern or more recent approach here in Rioja that we could call the French school. Now, the Spanish school or traditional Rioja style is blending a lot of different wines, as we've talked about, different grapes, different areas, and leave them mature for a very long time, 2-3 years, sometimes more, in American oak barrels mainly. American oak is very oaky, very smoky, it's almost burnt on the inside of the barrel, coconut aroma, so it gives a lot of bourbon whiskey-like type of flavors, and the long aging make the wines softer and rounder with less color and less grape, but with a huge spiciness from the oak. That's your traditional Rioja style Spanish school. But today, many wineries have realized that even in Rioja they can make wine with a more French school approach, or border school method, you could say, which is also the method that is used internationally now as well for reds, Napa, Chile, Barossa, everywhere it is used in. Shorter maturation in barrels, say 12 to 18 months, and use French oak instead of American. With this you get finer grains of tannins from the oak, less coconutty flavors, heavy flavors, so finer oak aromas essentially, and with that shorter period in barrel you retain more of the authentic fruity freshness from the grapes, so a wine that tastes more like berries with a little oak added to it and has a denser, grappier tannic structure, more like a Bordeaux or a Napa wine, but based, remember, on Tempranillo. This more French approach also often blend fewer terroir types into their blend or their bottled single vineyards, so as to give you more a real sense of the terroir rather than a huge blend of many things. Now, Rioja wines generally fall into one or the other of these two categories of styles, although it's probably more of a spectrum between the traditional Rioja style here, the French style there, and everything in between, a spectrum depending on how long you aged the wine for, how much American oak you used, how much different terroirs and different blocks you blend into the wine essentially. One single bodega will probably generally make wines in all of these different categories to serve different markets and different palates as well. And here I could spend not minutes but hours detailing all of the hundreds of different producers and their different winemaking approaches and wine styles that they make. But essentially it ranges from many large bodegas that buy grapes from small local growers, which is how things work mainly in Rioja, big bodegas, small vineyard owners, and they buy grapes. But you have smaller producers as well, growing their own grapes on their own estate, of course, and some just smaller projects buy a few selected batches of grapes from here and there. Again, there's a spectrum of models as far as wineries are concerned. Sure. It's modern days 2021. Now a few names you can ignore in Rioja. Bodegas Campo Viejo is by far the largest producer in Rioja. Huge operation and making actually good value wine and interesting wines. Nonetheless, you'll find them everywhere. Marques de Riscal, Marques de Murrieta, the CBNE or Compañía Vinícola del Norte de España. Those are really producers you can't mess. Bodegas Faustino, La Rioja Alta, R. López de Heredia or Bodegas Muga are some of the staple names in Rioja, selling globally some of the most popular wines out there. And I don't have much time here to elaborate all that much as this video is getting quite long, but know that Rioja does make a fair bit of white wines as well, even though they're definitely more famous for the reds. Those whites are based also, just like the reds are on Tempranillo, based on a grape called Viura that is known in other areas of Spain as Macabeo or Macabeu in Catalan. Those are generally really simple, acidic, quaffable wines, although with lower yields and a good oak treatment. Some wineries, more anecdotally, but it exists, manage to make fantastic whites worth investigating, definitely. Again, traditionally they would age these whites for ages in barrels so as to get a really spicy, really oaky, golden, almost brown, sometimes almost oxidized style of white wine. That's the traditional white style from Rioja, but Moro style is fresher on the acidity, on the fruity approach. But different style exists to this day, and they're certainly worth trying as well, the whites from Rioja. On this final fact, I'll leave it here for today. I hope this was useful. If it was, make sure to let me know in the comments and like the video. Share it with anyone you think will enjoy it and like learning about their vino, learning more. This is what we do, and I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Cheers. Salud.